My name is Charles Harrell with the Veterans History Project. Today is September 29th, 2007. I'm near Warsaw, Virginia today, talking to Mr. Francis Lloyd Murphy. Mr. Murphy, for the record, would you state your full name?
Francis Lloyd Murphy.
What is your current address?
127 Barnfield Road, Warsaw, Virginia.
And your zip code?
22572.
Where were you born, Mr. Murphy?
Charlotte Hall, Maryland.
And when were you born?
18th of November, 1926.
Today's interview really focuses on World War II. During that conflict, what branch of service were you in?
I was in the Quartermaster service.
With the United States Army?
Army.
And what was your enlistment date? Was it March 27th, 1945?
Yeah, that's so.
And when did they release you from World War II service? Was that December 23rd?
December 23rd, 46.
How many months did you serve?
18 months.
Were you called to be drafted before you actually were inducted?
Yes, I was drafted, yeah.
Were you drafted in November of 44 when you were 18?
Yeah.
So it took a few months for them to process you.
Right.
During World War II, what was your highest rank?
Corporal.
And what unit or battalion were you attached to?
I was in the 127 Quartermaster.
127?
Mm-hmm. Or 157, I'm sorry, 157.
The 157th Quartermaster Co.
157.
Company. Were you attached to any particular army during World War II?
I was, later on, I was transferred to Techukawa Air Base, which is 5th Air Force. I was in the 5th Air Force also.
Was that in World War II?
Right.
Okay. You also served after the war, too.
Yes, I got out in 46, and I went back in 47, re-enlisted at Fort Leslie J. McNair War College in D.C. And then I went back to Japan to serve again.
Was it basically doing the same type of job?
Same type. I went to a bakery in Yokohama. We had 65 Japanese, 7 enlisted men, and we put out between 20 and 25,000 loaves of bread a day. And I stayed there 5 years until Korea started. And that's when I come back to the States.
Went back in the States during the rest of your enlistment of about 20 years. You were still just doing bakery?
I spent 16 years in the bakery itself. And the last 4 years I was at Fort Stewart, Georgia, where I was setting up equipment we set up equipment for Vietnam, for automotive unit to go to Vietnam, which I was supposed to go. And I had my time in the service, so they gave me a choice of either go over to Vietnam or, get that discharge.
Even at the advanced age you were by 1966?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They would send you to Vietnam?
Yeah, right.
You must have been at least 40 or so by that time.
I was 39. I retired at 39 years old.
I'd like to drop back, first of all, and ask you a few questions about your early memories growing up. You were born at Charlotte Hall.
Yes.
How long did you stay there?
I would approximately say 10 years. I think I went to the 5th grade in Charlotte Hall. Then I moved to up around Browntown, which is between Waldorf and Hughesville. And I spent maybe a couple of years, maybe 5 years there.
Can you tell me about your mother and father?
My mother and father was farmers. He farmed all his life, grew tobacco, and he never owned anything his whole life. He always rent farms, from farm to farm. He planted tobacco, corn, and all type farm stuff.
What was his name?
Uh, Benny Murphy, Benny Winfield Murphy, and Murray Maggie Murphy was my mother's name. And they both lived. She lived to be 87, and I think my daddy was around 80, 89 when he died.
Was your dad in the First War?
No, he wasn't in World War One.
Was he too old, too young? What?
I don't have any idea why he wasn't in. He was born in somewhere in the 1890, somewhere around 1890, something that order, somewhere.
Growing up, were you the only child?
No, I had 11 in my family.
11 people?
11, 7 boys and 4 girls.
Where'd you fit?
I was the third youngest. I had my brother, Teeny, which got killed in an auto accident. I had my brother, Tommy, which passed away 2 years ago. My other brother, older than me, Raymond, he was also in the service. He spent time in Germany. He was a gunner on a B-29, and he didn't like it, so he come to be a cook. When he got out, he was a sergeant, mess sergeant, in charge of mess hall. And one of my older brother, Sonny, he was the next oldest, and James was the oldest boy. Then I had 4 girls. Daughter, Dolder was the oldest, Louise was the next oldest, and Legan was the third, and Edith was the fourth. And all of them deceased except me.
Was there any one of your siblings that you were really close to?
Well, Raymond, my brother Raymond, married her mother, my wife's mother.
Wow.
So that's the old saying that I'm my own grandpa. But yeah, he married my mother. That's where he met my mother. Her mother, when I met her, I was going with her, and my brother met her, and so they got married. She was divorced from my wife. When I met her, her father separated from her mother, and so that's why I took her in more or less to try to, help support them, And that's where I met her in Forestville, Maryland, up around D.C.
Were you a outside type of kid?
Yeah, I stayed on the farm, and we never had no transportation, up until I was just maybe 16, 17 years old, but I never did have a vehicle until I went in the service, I never had a vehicle. We stayed at home, all of us. And my oldest brother, of course, when he got, age, he went out on their own, but I was still at home when I was grafted. I was still at home at 18.
Did you do any hunting and fishing and camping?
All the time. Coon hunt. We had coon doves, rabbit doves. We coon hunt and rabbit hunt all the time. Anytime we could go, we'd go.
Did you make friends outside of your family that you went hunting with?
Yeah, we had a lot of friends, to come down to even all type of law enforcement, cops and all, come down there to hunt where we lived because we had duck blinds. We could go out and duck hunt. And the police would come down there, and Prince George County police would come down there and hunt on our property because we had around 16 or 1,700 acres of woods and marsh and river. We lived on the water. And we had a lot of friends come down, all the time visiting.
You remember one of your friends that really sticks out in your mind?
Not right offhand. I don't know of any.
Did you have dogs or cats or animals, pets?
We had quite a few cats and dogs, and we had one called Snowball, black as ace of spades, and he was a water spaniel, and he would run coons at night. We hunted. He wouldn't bark, but he would run a coon up until he put him up the tree, and then he would bark. When he put him up the tree, he would bark. And we used to have fun with him. He'd go down at the marsh and the muskrat houses where the muskrats lived in. He'd go down there and dig them out, dig the muskrats out of their holes. And a lot of times he'd go down and coons would be in there, living in the muskrat houses. I don't know where you're familiar with muskrat houses, built out of marsh weeds and that big mound out in the marsh. And he hunting that, those go in there and dig it up and dig the coons and everything out of that. We used to have a lot of fun. We trapped for a long time. Muskrats. Did a lot of trapping in the wintertime.
Did you have a gun that you used?
Yeah, I had a, yeah.
You had a favorite one?
I had one that I sold for $400 since I live here. I had a Browning automatic 16, and I was crazy for selling it. The thing was worth over $800, and I sold it for $400, which I could keep myself in for it. But yeah, I did have, and back in the younger days before I went into service, I had a single barrel that I bought. I think I paid like maybe $15 for it, that I used for rabbit hunting all the time. Single barrel shotgun, 12 gauge shotgun. But we all had guns. All the boys had guns.
You remember going to school as a kid?
Yeah, I remember. I didn't go, just like I say, I didn't go but the 7th grade in school itself. And of course we was on the farm. Like I say, we went down to the farm, never worried about school. And then when I went into service, that's when I got my GED.
Tell me about any of the teachers that you remember in elementary school.
I can't remember any of them. I can't remember them.
Did you have to ride a bus?
I remember the principal. His name was Martin. He was the principal of the school in Hughesville, Maryland, last school that I went to. And but for the teachers, I don't remember any of the teachers' names.
You mentioned that you went to about 7th grade. Was there any event that really changed your attitude about going to school?
Yeah. My kin people, my uncle's son was going to school with us, and we used to have a lot of fun because I was the bully of the school, and he would pay me, give me a bar of candy or something to whip somebody's butt. Which was real comical, and that's what I did. They say I was the bully of the school, the class that I was in. But I do remember that part of it. And of course, his name was Bill Murphy. He was my uncle's boy, my daddy's brother's boy. And
were you close to your relatives outside of your family? Was like a big clan area?
No, never. Not that much. The family stayed together pretty well, but when they all got married and left, we still had big gatherings,
How about the grandparents? Did you ever see your grandparents much?
No, I never seen them. Seen pictures, that's it. Never. They come from Ireland. My great-grandfather.
Your great-grandfather?
Come from Ireland, yeah.
Sometime before the Civil War, I guess.
Yeah. And I never met, I seen pictures, we had big pictures mounted on the wall. My daddy had them, and said it was his father and mother. But I never had seen them in person.
During the Great Depression, a lot of people lost their jobs, farms were going bankrupt.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I remember that. I was going down, I used to walk from Browntown down to the swamp. It was a swamp down there. We went down there fishing. We went catch catfish and pike. And I remember I could I must have been in the third grade or something like that, second, third grade. But we walked to school and walked back home. And we had about a couple miles we walked. And I remember Truman, not Truman, Roosevelt.
Roosevelt?
I remember him coming down the road. We was walking down the road. He come down the road in his convertible type old antique car, I call it, that he was riding in. And I remember seeing him come by us as we were walking down the road. And I remember that part of it during the Depression. I was, 4 or 5 years old, something like that. But I remember that.
Did your father ever get in financial problems during the Great Depression?
Oh yeah, terrible. And we had to we made a living by taking eggs to the store and swapping them for food. My mother raised chickens, 100, 200 chickens, and she'd keep the eggs and take them to the store and get sugar, coffee, salt, pepper, whatever, with the eggs. And we never had no money. My daddy worked for 50 cents an hour.
Was he sharecropping?
Well, he worked for a sharecropper. He, on a farm, and he worked, 50 cents, like, I don't know, $4 a day, $5 a day.
So he wasn't really farming in the fact that
He
was
did
taking
originally. He
stuff.
did, but when he was young, he did, farm with other people, but he did go to himself, farming after his kids got up big enough to farm. And we farmed, up until I was 18 years old. I farmed up until I was 18.
What was your duties on the farm as a kid? In the
We had
Great
to
Depression?
we had to go out and get the horses. We had no tractors, no farm equipment. Everything was done by hand. We had cultivators like that in the yard there. You can look at in the yard. And we walked behind a horse with them, cultivating tobacco, corn, what have you.
How old were you when you first started doing that stuff?
Well, seems you long enough to handle a cultivator, I would say 8 or 9 years old.
8 or 9.
Yeah, we started early. And we'd go down to Bourne and strip tobacco. After Merlin, they put tobacco in the barn, it cures it down, and we go down and take it off, tied up in bundles. And we spent our winter time during that. Sometimes we grow the tobacco. And then we would, strip it and put it in big piles to take it to the market. And we never got much. We'd get, about 1,000 pound tobacco, you might get $100, and you get a half of that. The landowner gets 50%, you get 50%, you get $50. You work all year, you could work all year for $1,000. My daddy run his grocery bill on credit, and when he sold his crop of tobacco, that's where he paid his bill. But we never had no money. We had no money at all for it, in your hand. You wanted something, you had to, get the best way you could.
Do you remember having to take the worms off the tobacco?
Oh yes. I picked a menu one off. Pick them off and pinch the head. Tobacco high 4 or 5 foot tall, and you just go down and pick all the. We never had any poison to put on tobacco. Tobacco we grew was natural tobacco with no chemicals or whatever on it, and that I don't think cigarettes did that much damage until they started using all this pesticide, on the crops. That's what I think makes a lot of people sick, is that stuff they put on the tobacco. Because we didn't do it when we, was growing tobacco. We never did any of that chemical stuff.
Did your father ever go on government relief during the
No,
Great
never
Depression?
did. No. Never got a penny from any relief from government or anything.
Did your father or mother talk about politics much?
No, he didn't care much for it because I think it was in, I remember him talking about it. I don't know where I was even born or not, but he had money in the bank. And during the Depression, he lost every bit of it. He didn't get, he had, I don't know, maybe $500 or $1,000 in the bank. He lost it. Bankrupt. The banks went under during the Depression. I remember him talking about that. He lost everything he had, what he had in the bank. And I remember that part of it. I remember him talking about it.
You mentioned that your family moved when you were about 10, sometime in the middle of the Great Depression, to a different place.
Yeah.
Was that caused by not having work?
Oh, yeah. The one we were living on wasn't that big, and the one we moved to was a lot bigger farm, a lot more land, and we could grow a lot more tobacco. And that was the reason for us moving.
The other stuff that you grew on your farm, was that just for home use also?
Yeah, we grew, like corn. We grew corn, and we fed the horses with the corn, and we made it when it was in the field, young corn. We ate it ourselves, and we took the corn to the mill and made flour out of it. And the wheat, we even grew wheat. And that's one thing we did do. Charlotte Hall had a big mill where I was born, that you take the flour down, or wheat down there, take 500 pounds of wheat, and they would grind it for you. And they take a half of it. They take 250 pounds and give you back 250 pounds of flour. And that's the way we worked. We didn't cost us anything to have it ground. Same with the corn. We take it down there, take so much down, and they take a half of it, and we'd get the cornmeal and stuff from the corn. And that's the way we did it. There was no money involved. We didn't have, just like I said, we go somewhere, get something, we'd just go down and swap it for something. Well, that's the way we did things back in them days.
Did you ever go on any type of vacation or trip as a kid?
No, never. Not until I was not young. All I went was anywhere was to a dance hall on a Saturday night. I might go to a dance hall.
So you never really left Maryland until you
No.
got in service?
No.
Did you have power in your houses during the Great Depression and early part of the war?
No. I don't think so. Not as I know of anything.
Not having power would cause you to not have too much access to warm water, right?
We had an ice box, put ice in it. And we never, food that we kept, never, all our meat, we raised, say a dozen pigs, and they get 300, 400 pounds, but we would kill them after the weather started getting cold in October, and we would salt it down in brine in a big containers, put the hams, kill the hogs and cut them up, put them in there and put salt and brine on them, and cover them with salt and brown sugar and stuff, and cure it ourselves. And we never had to put it in the refrigerator. After it cured, we take it out and hang it up on wires in the, call it meat house. They had a shed place just especially for meat. And that's what we did. We raised we had cows, we had our own milk, made our own butter, and just like I say, sausages, we had ground our own meat, made our own sausages, and everything was, self-contained. We never actually needed any money for it. We had all the apple trees, peach trees, stuff we grew ourselves, and my mother canned tomatoes. She had one room in the house that was nothing but canned goods, and they canned them in the big old half-a-gallon jars. And one bedroom was nothing but canned goods sitting on the floor, just jars and jars and jars. We'd go down to the tomato patch in the morning with the wagon and the horses, load it up with 10 or 15 baskets of tomatoes, bring them up there that afternoon. She'd have them canned them. She'd can them all day long, and skin them, and she'd put them in the jars and process them. Well, we self-contained our own self, back in them days.
Did you all have a radio?
Yeah, we did have a radio, but it was charged like battery charged type thing. We had outhouses, no bathroom. We hadn't even the bathrooms at all. We had a pump well. You'd go out and pump your own water by hand.
Growing up, not having hot water very often, you didn't bathe as much?
Tubs, we had wash tubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we bathed every night, because we had to go in the tobacco field working. You come home, you got gum, that black off the tobacco gum, they call it, tobacco gum, all over you. You had to take, But we'd put water on the stove, big box, and had big tubs.
You had a big wood stove to cook with?
Yeah, all stoves with wood. We would burn our own wood, cut our own wood.
As the Great Depression continues, the world is getting very desperate, and in Germany they elect Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
You were about 10, 12, 13 years old as
I
the war
remember,
got started.
I would remember they coming around. I remember Japanese. I remember people coming around, picking up all the metal they could find. And we would go out and pick up anything we could find and scrap, like a old wagon wheel or anything with metal, And these people come around and pick them up. And that's what shot us back at us during World War II in Japan. All that stuff went to Japan. And we could kick ourselves in the butt many times for doing that, getting them that stuff, But they say they shot it right back at us, Because they come over and got all the steel they could find all over the United States. And I did help collect stuff, and they come around, they come and say, gather up all the steel, we come back around and pay you for it. Because that was good, because we get money, see.
Did you actually see Japanese agents doing that?
No. It was all done through American people,
But at the time, it didn't seem like you were
No,
doing
it didn't.
wrong.
We didn't know what the heck it was for, It was back in 38, 39. I was, 10, 12 years old. I didn't know what it was for. At 39.
Had you been ever talked about what Hitler was doing in Europe before the war started?
Yeah, we knew, what things was going on, of course. After he went into occupied what I think was first one was France,
Okay.
and then he went on to the next country. We knew that something had to come because he just going to take over the whole continent, or, Europe continent over there. And where would he go then? He'd come to the United States after he got everything over there.
At 14 years old, you realized that it was going to be a war?
I remember, I realized, I wasn't very old, and then of course he grafted my brother. He went in, he was like 5 years older than I was.
So he went in before the war started?
Oh yeah, he went in, he grafted him, he grafted, I don't know where the war started, but he went in somewhere in 39 or 40. I think he went in that time. I don't exactly know, I didn't have any records on him, but I know he went in way before I did.
In the 30s, the Japanese were doing some really nasty stuff in China. Had you heard anything about that at that time?
No, I never heard anything about Japan until, I went over there. But when I went to Japan in 45, it was deserted. Tokyo. I went directly to Tokyo, and it was deserted. Cabs, taxi cabs, and vehicles on the street, all burnt. No tires on them, all disintegrated. The Americans dropped these bombs that it's got like jelly in them, and when they hit something, it sticks to it and burns. I don't know what they call them, some kind of disintegrated bomb or something. But that's what they did. Tokyo was completely, empty. I mean, when we went into Tokyo, we could drive down the main street of Tokyo, 50, 60 miles an hour, nobody there. That was when when we first went there. We went in an old building with nothing but a cot and a duffel bag's all I had. No mess hall, nothing to eat. All we got was a little package of seafood, called a seafood package. And we got cigarettes, chewing gum, and food, whatever we had in the sea ration. And that's what we lived on. And we set up this bakery. And they took our old Jeep motor out of a Jeep and had made a drive shaft for the mixers to run the machines, no electric enough. They used a gas Jeep motor and run a saw outside and hooked up to, that's how we made our first bread over there. But we had no mess hall, hadn't been set up. There was nothing set up. And we had to carry weapons with us all the time. And when we went downtown, we had to go 4 to 5 people at a time. We couldn't go by ourselves.
Before we get further on in the war, do you recall the day that Japan bombed Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I do. Sure do.
Where were you and what were you doing?
I was, I think I was at home. I remember it happened. It was in 41.
December 7th, 1941.
Yeah, I remember that. But I was at home, I remember that.
How'd you hear the news?
On the radio, yeah. Battery operated radio.
You were 15, 14 at the time.
I remember when he said in infantry.
You remember that speech?
Roosevelt said, in infantry, and I remember that part of it.
What went through your mind as a kid?
I couldn't believe it, that he had, the nerve to come come over there that far from Japan, and I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was a big joke first started. I couldn't believe he had bun Pearl off. And I say that's the saddest part of it. I wanted to go down there, but he wouldn't let me go. I seen pictures of it and movies of it, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, where they dropped the 2 atomic bombs. But when I went there, they wouldn't allow you to go down there. Because the radiation was so bad. But I seen it completely annihilated the whole city. All was left up there with the telephone poles. And he was burnt on one side like, just like he just put a blowtorch on it. And that was all was standing. Everything else was flat to the ground.
Before you went into service from 1941 until 45, did you look toward the Japanese with hatred or anger?
Yeah, I did in a way, because, I despised Tojo, he was a head man in Japan at that time. And I didn't care much for him, but he was the one that was, caused all this. I didn't blame the Japanese people itself. I blamed, the Tojo was a man. And thing about that, I knew the man that hung him. I knew the lieutenant that hung him, actually hung Tojo.
Tell me about when you got the notice to be drafted and later in the war. How did you get the notice that you were going to be called up?
He sent me a mail letter. And I was being drafted.
What did you have to do?
Nothing. I just reported to Fort Meade, and that was it. I went to Fort Meade. From there, they took it from there.
Tell me what happened at Fort Meade.
Well, I went in, processed. I thought, processing in the service. And of course, he run me through, gave me all my shots, and interviewed me, and told me where I was going, got my uniforms and all that stuff together. Yeah.
How'd you get them Fort Meade?
They picked me up, I think, with a bus.
Was there anybody else who was being picked up about the same time that you knew?
No, not that I knew, not any around my hometown that I knew.
What was your last glimpse of your mother and father as you were leaving? You recall?
Well, it wasn't too bad because I had two brothers. Another brother who went in the service ahead of me, and it wasn't too bad. And then when I went to Florida, Camp Landing, Florida, for basic training, and I come back home, and that's when Germany surrendered, so they didn't feel too bad then. And my mother and father, said, well, it'd be over soon, So
Did you have a choice on what branch to join?
no, I didn't. Not that I know of. Then I was in the infantry. That's what the training I'd done in Florida. It was infantry that I was training, carrying the M1 rifle.
How was training for you? Were you physically fit?
It was pretty rough. I had trouble. I sweat a lot. And they had these canvas leggings. You wore a three-quarter shoe with canvas leggings. I don't know whether you're familiar or not. The old, you wore leggings up to here. And it went down over your three-quarter boot, come up to here. And I sweat all the time, and my legs got all chafed. And I mean, they got skin just raw, from the leggings. You had to wear them. That was uniform. You had to wear them. Because I used to use, different kind of stuff to give me. But it was pretty rough.
Was there one incident that you recall?
Yes, I do. I had been, I think it was a Saturday morning, I had been to the doctor's on a Friday, a dentist, and they pulled 6 or 8 of my teeth. I had bad teeth when I went into service. And I come back that Friday, and Saturday morning we had an inspection every Saturday morning in Class 8 uniform. And I got, the doctor told me, stay out of the sun, And I told my sergeant, who was in charge of it, and I told him, I guess he didn't tell the company commander or nothing. Because Captain Borden, I remember him, he was a 55-year-old man, captain, that was our commander. And we stood there inspection that morning, and I hit the ground. I passed out, and I wound up in the hospital. And because they had a big stink about it, and I told him, I told the sergeant that I had, had 5 or 6 teeth pulled, and the doctor told me not to go out in the sun. And we stand at attention. And I had a heat stroke in Florida. I remember that part of it.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
It was about a day.
Yeah, about a day.
Yeah.
Were you considered unfit because of that incident?
No, everything's all right. Once my teeth, once they heal, my gums heal. You give me a set of 4 teeth, and that was all right.
So you stayed in the infantry at the time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I come back, stayed there and done my, 8 weeks or 10 weeks of training.
Were you good at shooting?
Oh yeah, I was number one. In fact, I was about the best because I had done a lot of shooting, civilian life. That's something that I had that I can't find. I had, at War College, I was on a rifle team at the War College. And I can't find them records where I was in a rifle team. And I did. I was a good. I scored. He couldn't believe it. Down there, 99 out of 100. At M1 rifle. But I knew how to work them, how to, adjust the sights on them and everything else, and I was good at it. I was real good at, M1. But that's what when I went to Japan, I thought what I would be doing, because, and I don't know why they put me in the bakery. I wasn't no bakery. I wasn't a baker. But that's what I did from the time I went to Japan till 16 years. I stayed in the bakery.
So up until you headed off for Japan, you thought you were going to be a combat infantryman?
Yeah.
Tell me where you went after basic training.
I come home on 30 days, then I went back to Camp Gordon, Georgia. And I took advanced training for the Pacific. I had been trained for Europe, Germany. And of course, Germany surrendered, and then they was going to send me to Japan, so I had to go back and take training at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Camp Gordon or Fort Gordon. And that's where I wound up. I went from there, after I did about 4 weeks training, I went to Fort Ord, California. And they put me on a ship for the Philippines.
Do you remember the name of the ship?
No, I don't. I don't know. I don't know where this is it here or not. It might be.
Well, tell me, how was the trip
It
along?
might be that. I think it was that ship right there. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it was.
How was the trip on the ocean for you?
Pretty good. I never bothered me. I never got seasick in it, but some of them, I mean, it was terrible. I mean, you couldn't even go down in the hole where you slept, you know, because people all throwing up and it was something like out of heaven. I stayed up on deck most of the time. And I did volunteer to go to the mess hall so I could get food. That's what you got to do. You got to keep your stomach full.
Were you cooking on the ship too, or just eating?
I baked bread on the ship.
You never done it before?
No, but they taught me how to bake it. The cooks did. And I went down and baked. That's where I baked bread on the ship going over. And even coming back from Japan, I did that too. I volunteered, you know, to work in the mess hall. Because I was pretty good at it. And so that's what I did.
And you had never really cooked anything before that time?
No. And, from this day, I don't know why, but like I say, we put out a lot of bread. And we put out bread in Japan when we first went there. We called it a sheet bread. It was a pan about 2 foot long, and we put the bread in there. When it comes out, the bread was connected to each other. It didn't have dividers in, and we called it sheet bread. And the mess hall would come up and pick it up at the bakery where we worked, and we'd give them, you know, so many sheets of it. How much they needed, you know, for 100 people, we give them so much of it.
When you got overseas to the Philippines, you hopped off this boat.
And got on another one. I didn't even land.
Was the war over by that time?
Ship. Yeah, the war ended while I was on the water.
Okay. When you got off that boat,
onto a LST.
You got on LST.
A landing boat. One of these ones the front drops down. And I was on that thing on top of the deck going to Japan. I remember that just as well.
It's a long ways from Philippines to Japan.
Right. But we slept on top of the deck. Cots, everybody lined up on the deck. It was an open ship, you know, just similar to that, but didn't have a place to go down and sleep like on a regular, you know, ship. We slept on the deck.
The war was over by that time,
Yeah,
and had you been assigned as bakery yet?
No. That's when we went to Tokyo. When I left the Philippines, we went to Tokyo. And that's where we went into Tokyo is nothing. We didn't have anything, nothing whatsoever, just a duffel bag of clothes and a cot to give us a cot.
When you got to Tokyo, did you unload on a dock or on a beach?
On a dock. And they transported us to Tokyo and put us in a building. No windows, no doors. They had been all blown. Just a concrete building with a roof on it. But all the windows without doors, no doors. We slept in hallways, any place you could put a cot. And that's where we slept.
Was it cold at night?
Yes, it was cold. We slept sleeping bags and 2 blankets. It was cold.
Had you made friends in your unit yet?
Yeah, we was all pretty well, you know. Once we set the bakery up, started making bread, we all, you know, pretty well.
But at that time, when you first arrived in
I
Tokyo,
didn't know nobody.
you weren't.
Everybody was strange to me. I didn't know anybody.
You mentioned you got to this company that baked bread, the bakery company. Had you figured out why they put you there
No, I never did. Just none of us. We just said, you know, this guy went down and said, we're going to set up a bakery and we're going to make bread for the servicemen coming over here, you know. But like I say, there wasn't nothing there. And they had to bring us the flour and the sugar and the salt and, you know, yeast and everything to make it with.
Did they ask for volunteers?
No,
No.
you just assigned me to it. And I just went at it.
Did you ever see that infantry company again?
No. Mm-mm. I didn't stay there about 2 months, maybe at most. I went to Techukawa. And that when we went in a hangar, Air Force, it was an Air Force Japanese air base. And the Americans took it over, and it was a hangar, airport hangar that we set the bakery up. And it was the same system we had in Tokyo, but it was better ovens. We had 2-tier ovens. We could bake probably, I would say, 20 loaves at a time, which is, you know, down at the other place, we just baked like 2 pans at a time. But we had a big double stack ovens, put 5 pans in it, and it had 2 layers. And we had gasoline, they burned gasoline, because that's all we had. No, you know, wasn't liquid or nothing over there.
Were you a private at this time?
I made corporal. When I went to Techukawa, I made corporal. I wasn't in service about 6 months, 7 months. I made corporal.
Were you supervising folk?
At the end, when I did get to Techukawa I was supervisor, and I was in charge of the personnel. We had no laundry. We worked in our khaki clothes in the bakery, and had a Japanese woman to come up, and we slept in the bakery, had cots in the bakery, and we had to just get our water best way we could, you know. No pumps or, you know, running faucets or nothing like that. Didn't have nothing like that. And it was, you know, really fun. I had fun during it, but thinking back, then finally, after a couple months, they built a building for me and another guy. He was another couple, I think, 2 of us couple. And that went for us to sleep in outside the bakery. But the rest of them slept in the bakery. I think it was about 7 or 8 of us. And we were the only 2, and we had a little hut to ourselves, a little shack they built for us.
So there were about 7 or 8 people you worked with.
Bakeries, yeah.
But then you also had a lot of civilian folk working for you.
Not this one.
Not this one?
No, this was all done by Americans. And we had furnished the Air Force base, which was 5th Air Force, at Techukawa. And we furnished a mess hall for them and bread and stuff, you know. And anyone within certain radius, we baked bread for. But when I went back, this was during, you know, the Korean War, but when I went back to Japan, and
You had a lot of civilian workers.
yeah,
But during World War II, it was basically 7 or 8 people making all the bread for the entire base.
This was when I went back in '47.
Okay.
That's what we had right there. That's me right there. You see me there?
Right.
I'm in the white. But that was the officer and the sergeant. And that's what in the bakery, we baked 20,000 loaves a day, at least, sometimes more.
Tell me, did you also bake other things besides this bread?
Yes, we did. In 50,
How about in World War II? We'll stick with that for right now.
we made raisin bread, and that just mostly, you know, scraped white bread and raisin bread.
So not cakes and pies?
No, we didn't bake, no, the mess hall baked that. We didn't bake any kind of pastries, no pastries. And say the mess hall made their own pies.
So you were pretty much like a factory
Yeah.
producing bread for whoever needed bread.
Right.
Did your bread find its way to the civilians at all times?
No.
You could tell.
They didn't care for bread. Japanese didn't care for bread for some reason. They loved their rice. They eat a bowl of rice rather than a slice of bread. We eat a sandwich. They eat a bowl of rice. They was rice eaters. I mean, they didn't care for bread.
I want you to try to remember, if you can, your first incident with a Japanese civilian. Do you recall?
Not too good. We had them to come in, you know, later on to try to help us, but you couldn't understand them. They didn't speak English, and you couldn't understand what they were saying. You know, we could say, you know, konnichiwa, or that's hello, and, you know, sayonara is goodbye, and, you know, stuff like that, but I could talk, you know, some Japanese, but and they didn't understand us, so, you know, I mean, we didn't have too many, didn't, you know, mess around with too many Japanese at that time, as we did later on, after.
Tell me about how long you stayed in Techukawa.
I stayed there just about a year.
Did you see any important people?
No, never went out of it. One time, we took a vehicle, they gave us a vehicle, a weapons, what they call a weapons carrier, and for recreation, and we could fill it up with gas, and we could take it on a week, Saturday or Sunday, and we did go to Fuji, Mount Fuji, and that was the only time I even left the base.
What did you see there? Just the mountain?
Just to Fuji. Yeah, I got pictures here somewhere of it. That's what it looked like.
Did you go to any USO shows of any sort?
Yes, I was down in Tokyo. I went to one and played pool in Tokyo before I went to Techukawa.
Did you see any singers or dancers of any significance?
No, just wasn't in it there at all.
After about a year in Techukawa, your time in the service was nearing an end. Did they give you an option to stay with the service?
Yeah, they offered. That's like I say. They offered me master sergeant to stay at the bakery and run the bakery for another year or 2 years or whatever. But you know, I wouldn't re-enlist. I wouldn't sign up for it. And the guy below me, corporal was below me, he got it. He took it, you know, signed up to stay over there.
Do you recall the name of the man who you became best friends of over?
I can't recall. I know some of them, you know, later on, but not that time in Japan. Right. I couldn't remember none of the guys' names in Japan. None of the servicemen. I remembered it later on, but not the ones who was in Japan. But
as you were going to be able to be discharged, they sent you home. Did you fly or take a boat back?
Boat. Come back on a boat.
Was the water rough or anything there?
Yeah, right bad, right rough.
You didn't get sick, did you?
No, I didn't, but a lot of them did. Terrible. It was terrible, I tell you.
Did you volunteer to work in a mess again?
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah. And the thing of it is, coming back, it was a big transport, troop transport. One of the motors went out, and that held us up for another 3 to 4 days on the water. And it was running out of supplies, no water. You know, said conserve your water. You know, you had canteens, a kid on your belt, told you to fill them up, and be sure you drank a little bit. And then it was actually scared because the motor, they had to come all the way back to States on one motor. Well, we was about halfway out. And I think it's 79 days, 7 or 9 days to come back. And it took us 15. And he was running out of supplies on the ship. And it was a big ship. One of the, motors went out on it.
Did they land in California?
Yeah.
How did you get across the country back home?
By train. Yeah, by train.
That must
Back
have
then.
been an experience too.
Yeah, it was. Or Army troop there, chucking along, those cold engines on. Took us a long time to come across, and then, of course, you know, the next time I flew, 47.
When you arrived in Maryland again, did your parents come and meet you somewhere?
My brother lived in D.C., and then I come to Fort Meade, and he come pick me up at Fort Meade. My brother did, my oldest brother.
Did you go back home or stay with him?
I went back home.
What did your mother do when she saw you?
Oh, we had a good time. They enjoyed it, yeah. Yeah, it was living in Waldorf, right in Waldorf. When I come out of service, that's where they was living.
What did you go back to? Some type of job of any sort?
No, I farmed. My father was farming a farm there, and I went there. And I worked what time I was added to service, 6 or 8 months. Drove tobacco, and I didn't get doodly out of it, nothing. I like maybe $50, $100. All year for $50, $100, that's what made me go back into service,
You saw no future?
I saw no future, in civilian life. I said, why, and
What did your father and mother think about that?
well, he was tickled, for me to go back into service. Because my brother was still in too. He spent 9 years. He was still in service.
After the war and you went back into the service, you went back into the bakeries.
Yeah. Well, I went to Fort War College, Fort McNair, and I was there where I re-enlisted, and he sent me straight back to Japan. As fast as I could go.
Was that the same place you went back to?
Yokohama. I went back to Yokohama. They had a big bakery. That's the one that I was showing you the picture of.
How long did you stay there?
5 years.
5 years?
There was one in Tokyo and one in Yokohama, and I went to Yokohama, and we set up, and 65 Japanese and seven enlisted men. Tokyo had the same thing, and when Korea started, the Christmas after Korea started, we packed, made 20,000 fruit cakes, which 2 pounds apiece. It was in a loaf, 2-pound loaf. We made 40,000 in Tokyo. We made 40,000 and sent them to Korea. Flew it over, fruit cake. We made that 20,000 fruit cakes in one day.
As you look back on your World War II experience, do you think the military changed your life any?
Oh, definitely.
What did it do for you?
Well, it made me more self-sufficient, more, I can do it on my own, I learned a lot. I can do anything I want to do, once I got out of the service. Service taught me a lot. And I built this house. I built this garage. I built the shed. Everything, I did that's what I did when I got retired. I did, construction work. And
As you look back on your service and realize if you had only been born a year earlier, you might have been dead.
exactly.
Do you have any concerns about what you did versus what 1 year older guys had done? Or
No, my brothers was older than I was. They both went in and they both seemed to like it. One of them didn't and one of them did. One of them stayed in 9 years and the other one got out after the war ended. He got out of the service. He didn't like it. But for that, I loved the service. I ain't got no grudge against the service. What made me so mad is in the service is that people complain about, this, that, and the other. They should have went to Japan after the war and see what happened over there. They had Japanese on the sidewalks coming from the Philippines, Okinawa, and all these islands on boats, come in there with no shoes, no clothes, all raggedy, lice crawling all over their heads. They come home to nothing, you know. They was just, they bring them in on a boat and just drop them right in Yokohama or Tokyo, wherever the boat come in. They just drop them, say, you on your own, you know. And they served the country, you know, during the war. But they never got no benefits whatsoever. I mean, he was all just left out on the street. They had no place to go. All them servicemen and Japanese service guys that was in Nagasaki or Hiroshima where the bombs were dropped, they had no home. They had no parents. They had nothing.
Did you feel sorry for them
Oh
at the
yeah,
time?
definitely. I give them candy and stuff. Sure I did. But they had nothing.
While here in America, we were just flowing with stuff. Thank you for your interview today, and it was nice to hear your story.